Do you love going to Broadway shows, but can't go now because Broadway's closed? Join tour guide Tim and Velasco too as they bring Broadway history to you. Grab your Broadway passport for what's in store on your virtual Broadway tour.
With one glance at the beautiful facade of the Lyceum Theater, it's easy to see why in 1974 it was the first Broadway theater to be landmarked. And for anyone looking at it today, they're getting a very similar view to when it first opened one exact week after the New Amsterdam, except for one difference: the name. When it originally opened, it was called the New Lyceum. Why the distinction? In 1903, Broadway's address was changing. Prior to the theater district being centered in Times Square like today, it was originally about 10 blocks south in Herald Square. George M. Cohan gives us a nice hint in his song, "Give my regards to Broadway, remember me to Herald Square." As Manhattan slowly developed northward, so too did our theaters. The original Lyceum and the old theater district was set to be demolished, so the new in the title was needed to distinguish this new Lyceum from the old Lyceum. My favorite part about the move: 13 of the foundation stones from the original theater were carried up to Times Square and incorporated into the new Lyceum. Still to this day, it's the only theater that has a piece of Herald Square that made it to this new theater district in Times Square. The new Times Square Theater District unfolded quickly, with new theaters opening within days of each other in October of 1903. But this newly developed area was still a far cry from the bright lights and billboards that populated today. In fact, as would happen again in the 1970s and 80s, parts of Times Square were very unsafe in 1903. With dimly lit streets perfect for pickpockets and prostitutes, the east side of Times Square became known as Thieves' Lair. The architects for the Lyceum, Henry Hertz and Hugh Tallant, who also designed the New Amsterdam and a few other notable theaters we'll see later in our virtual journey, they wanted to ensure the street would be safe for those naive theatergoers dressed to the nines, unaware of what lurked in the shadows. To better illuminate the street, 4 gigantic pots of fire were added to the stone ledge near the top of the theater. Those gas flames were lit each evening to ward off criminals and to illuminate the beautiful facade of the theater. What happened to the fire pots, you ask? Well, the open flaming pots of fire were considered a fire hazard and were later removed. So now I guess we have the Starbucks across the street to provide illumination in their place. The Lyceum was built by manager and Broadway producer Daniel Frohman, who believed in a very intimate theatrical experience. The theater was designed in the living room style, but he didn't stop at the auditorium downstairs. He also built an entire 2-story apartment on the top of the theater, complete with chimney, many lavish rooms, and balcony doors near the fire pots. Frohman created a theatrical paradise for himself and his wife, actress Margaret Illington. Below their apartment, Frohman installed an entire scenery shop for all aspects of building a production to be housed in one place on site. Once sets were painted, they were simply hoisted down to the stage from above. Over 100 years later, the apartment's decor looks quite different, as it's now the home to the Shubert Archives. We'll talk more about the Shubert brothers later in our journey, but we can thank these men for creating a lot of what we know as Broadway with their bare hands. So, with a vast collection of telegrams, architectural sketches, and photos accumulated since they began in 1900, the Shubert organization needed somewhere to house it all. The archive was first established in 1976 and has been a home for researchers, including this guy, for years. The incredible staff are some of the most intelligent theater historians I've ever met. And this treasure trove, my favorite being the collection of Tony Awards they have, is a hidden gem high above Broadway. Actress Margaret Illington, wife of Lyceum theater owner Daniel Frohman, had appeared in many Broadway shows, but it was her starring role in the 1907 production of The Thief at the Lyceum that proved most interesting. During rehearsals for the production, Frohman watched from the back of the auditorium and noticed that his wife was prone to overacting in a pivotal scene in the second act. To assist his wife, Frohman had an idea. He decided to carve a small door in the wall of their apartment with a view down onto the stage. Frohman explained to his wife that during each performance he would watch her from his viewing window above, and if she appeared to be overacting, he would stick his arm through the portal and wave a white handkerchief. If Illington saw the handkerchief, she would adjust her acting in front of the live audience, just as her husband desired. The entire thing sounds preposterous, but I've seen the trapdoor with my own eyes, still there over 100 years later. I wondered, what happened to their marriage with self-esteem issues running amok? As a surprise to no one, Illington wanted to end the marriage, and a rare divorce was granted in 1909. Good for you, Margaret.
What up, world? Happy Saturday! Happy 4th of July. Welcome to your Saturday Night on Broadway series here at Broadway Up Close as part of our Virtual Broadway Tour Series. Every week, we're coming to you live with someone who has worked at the theater we're featuring that week. And this week, our guest is Jason SweetTooth Williams from Be More Chill. For those that aren't familiar with me or Broadway Up Close, my name is Tim Dolan. I'm an actor and the owner of Broadway Up Close walking tours here in New York City. For the last 10 years, our tours have unearthed secrets, fun facts, ghost stories, and history from the 41 Broadway theaters. I have an entire team, what I call my green team, who are all actors and stage managers. And we are your windows and eyes into the world of Broadway and New York theater. Last year, we opened our gift shop in Times Square with the 6-foot-tall Broadway sign, which you may have seen. And in addition to the 5 exterior tours that we offer, this past fall, we opened our first interior Broadway tour inside Broadway's oldest theater, the Hudson. For more info on that, after you hang out with me and Jason today, you can head to our website at www.broadwayupclose.com. Months ago, I have to say, I never really envisioned a world of New York City without Broadway. I didn't think the shutdown was going to last this long, but 2 months in, I really started to miss connecting with theatergoers and talking about theater and touring in Times Square. So now with the creation of our Virtual Broadway Tour Series, we're going to try and keep that Broadway love alive in the meantime. 41 Broadway theaters, 41 weeks. We're going to start with the oldest, which we have a couple weeks ago at the Hudson, and we're moving forward in time chronologically, which brings us to week 3, the Lyceum. I hope you've enjoyed all of our weird, zany history and fun facts this week. For tonight, how's it going to work? For tonight's series, we'll learn all about Jason's theatrical journey, his time working at the Lyceum, specifically on Be More Chill. If you have any questions for him or me along the way, drop them in the comments. And for those that are joining us live, hi, comment with where you're watching us from in the little comments box and give us like a little wave. And so I present to you, without further ado, Broadway's Jason SweetTooth Williams. Here he is.
Hey, what's up, Tim? How are you, man?
How's your life? Happy 4th of July.
And to you as well. Happy 4th to you. Can you hear me okay? I'm in these like monster headphones.
They are monster headphones, and I love every bit of the monster headphones. Yeah, I can hear you.
Good,
I think we can all hear you. Okay, so let's start from the top of your life. So tell us where you're from, where you grew up, first exposure to theater, if you went to college for theater, anything that pertains to your theatrical journey that gets you to New York City. And then from there, we'll talk shows you've done and shows we've done together, and then we'll throw some questions your way. All right, hit it, go.
Cool. I love it. So yeah, that's a lot of information coming at you with this first question. No, yes. I mean, I grew up in Connecticut. I'm born and raised in Connecticut, and have been here. You know, I'm actually staying at my parents' house in Connecticut right now during this quarantine.
Great.
Which is great and also crazy because I love everyone to death, but also.
Yeah, you just spent like so much time of your life like being an adult and having your own family and living your life, and then now suddenly you're with your parents and they're like back to telling you what to do, and you're like, no. Just because I'm here doesn't mean I'm 12 years old again.
No, exactly. But they're awesome, and they're taking good care of my wife and I and my children. So that's
Great.
awesome. But I'm from this area. I'm from southeastern Connecticut, and I mean, I don't know. I think I always loved theater without knowing that I loved it specifically. I mean, I always like thought of myself as someone that was into like the arts, and even at a young age, I always thought I was like, thinking of movies and music and all of these things that I thought were, challenging my brain and all these things. And so my first foray into theater actually was when I was probably about 10 years old, and my school had like a drama club at the school that I joined because I like loved my teacher, Mr. Dart. Shout out to Mr. Dart, who like ran the drama club, and so I joined to like be around him and be with my friends there. And we went on this tour of the Goodspeed Opera House, which many people will know is like this big regional theater in Connecticut. And
it's been around for 8,000 million years.
Forever. And like literally like where like Annie started, and like one of the theater. I'm going to put my ear here like I'm recording an album.
I know, you're very fancy, Beyonce.
So I can hear myself a little bit better. But anyway, so when we were there, we discovered, we were told that they were like having local auditions for like local kids to be in a show there. And I was like, I want to try, why not? And so I got myself a top hat and sang. As you do. As you do. I don't even know where I got it, but I somehow like got my hands on this top hat. And
I love that like little you was like required audition material is like a song, a 16-bar cut, and a top hat. You were like,
exactly.
Great.
And I didn't know what any of those things were except a top hat. I was like, show business equals top hat. That's like the one equation I knew. And so I did. I went and I sang Hello, Dolly, the title song from Hello, Dolly. And they cast me in the show. And so I was like the local kid in the show. And the show was Here's Love, which is the musical version of Miracle on 34th Street, written by Meredith Willson.
Sure.
And so anyway, when I was 10, I did that. And the cast, like, I had no appreciation for it at the time, but like Jan Maxwell was in it, like all these massive actors. And I had no idea. I mean, I loved them, but I didn't know like they were like the thing.
Yeah.
And
that's crazy.
Yeah, it was crazy. But since, from that moment, I was always like, I like those kind of people. I like that sort of feeling and existence. And like, I wanted to do that. Fast forward to like the rest of my adolescence and, always interested in theater, but I was never like a theater like kid. Like my parents weren't like stage parents, like getting me to auditions to like get me on Broadway and do all those things. Although I happily would have done that. And when it was time for me to go to school, like go to college, I had a lot of interests, and I was like, I don't know. I just feel like I remember that theater thing that I really liked. And ended up, auditioning for the theater program at Emerson College, where I went to my undergrad. Amazing. And I got my Bachelor of Fine Arts in acting from Emerson College. And
then from there, you go right to New York City?
Essentially, I mean, I met a girl there, as sometimes happens in school.
As you do.
And she and I traveled a little bit after school, but I just kept being like, I feel like I got to go to New York and try to be an actor.
Sure.
And actually, this might be a good segue for what you think is coming next, because when I did get to New York, I knew nobody, and I didn't know how to like do it, how to be an actor. But the Goodspeed Opera House came back into my mind, and it was like, I wonder, this was like, it was 20 years ago, but maybe there's still somebody there who remembers who I was as a 10-year-old
Yeah, they
boy.
were like, that kid, the kid with the top hat. We remember you. You're like,
no one
still got it.
The top hat. Yeah, I'm like, it's in my bag. I'm ready to go.
Right. You're like, hello, Dolly. Let's go.
Yes. And so anyway, I reached out to them, and they said, we do remember you. You were the kid with those chubby cheeks. And we remember you, and we loved you as a kid. What are you up to now? And I said, I'm trying to get involved in, being a professional actor. And they said, well, we've cast our season for the year, so there's no chance of that. But we're doing this pilot program where we're inviting recent college graduates to come to the theater and take like classes, like audition classes and dance workshops or whatever. And would you like to do it? And I said, yeah, of course, that sounds great. So I went out to Goodspeed and you know, did those things. And it was a core group of us. And like Alicia Umphris, I don't know if you know her, but she was in that crew as well. And so she and I were like, you know, kicking it back in the day. And so anyway, in addition to these classes, there was this like the NYU Graduate Musical Theater Writing Program was also having their like 2-week residency at Goodspeed. So like all of these things kept lining up, and I got randomly assigned to sing backup in one of these songs by one of these kids who was a Graduate Musical Theater Writing Program kid, and his name was Joe Iconis, and he was workshopping his show, The Black Suits, and I like randomly sang like, you know, the baritone line that was just like one note, you know, singing through the whole thing.
Correct. Hello, Dolly. Well, hello, Dolly. Yes.
It's so nice to have you back.
You belong. Yes.
Yeah. So anyway, that's where I met Joe Iconis, and
crazy.
Sort of became really sort of fast friends and collaborators with him.
And if you had to give that a year, what year was that?
That was 2005.
Okay. All right. And so then, okay, fast forward a little bit. The first show I ever saw you in, I don't think we've ever talked about this, was Crossing Brooklyn with Transport Group, which Jack Cummings, the third artistic director and creator of Transport Group, who's I think a genius. I was just saying to him, like, I saw that and it just, it like changed. I don't know if it changed my life, but it's like still some of the most memorable theater I've ever seen in my life.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, it's funny the way things connect to themselves in the theater world, and I guess in life in general. But I was doing a concert of Joe's music that Jack Cummings came to see, and I didn't know him. I didn't know who he was, and I'd heard maybe of Transport Group, but this was like 2007 at the time, so they were still relatively new as a company as well. Yeah. And he like emailed me and he said, "Hey, I saw you in this concert, and I need someone to play this role in the show. Are you interested in, you know, in doing it?" And I had no idea. I was like, well, I guess, sure, I'll try it, you know. And it ended up being such a great collaboration. And for like the people at home who don't know, Crossing Brooklyn is a musical about by the great Jenny Gearing about a school teacher post 9/11 who is like trying to return back to work after like sort of things are getting back to normal in New York City, and literally crossing the Brooklyn Bridge to get back into the city to go restart her life. And
just real light, like, light and fluffy.
Exactly. Yeah. But it was actually, for me, I played the guy, I ran this like coffee shop, and I was like the guy who was like, "It's okay, you can do it, kid," you know, that sort of role.
Sure.
But that started a very long, fruitful collaboration with Jack and with Transport Group. And, you know, you and I don't, you know, we can get into it when you're ready to, but that's how you and I met, through Transport Group. And
Once Upon a Mattress, we both did the first concert of it, right?
No, actually,
who was, I can't remember who the Prince was in the concert when we did it.
Yeah, in the concert, I believe it was Dave Ross.
Oh my God, it was. Who was amazing
and
equally funny and hilarious and
just the best dude in the whole world.
Yeah, so we did the Once Upon a Mattress concert with Jackie Hoffman. Lip Synca is what I did originally, and then years later, Mary Rogers, basically like right before she passed, saw it. And then basically on her deathbed gave the like blessing of Transport Group to do this with Jackie and Lip Synca, and then enter Jason Sweet Tooth Williams and Tim Dolan as night number 3. So
night number 3 the world has ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, who cares about night number 2 is what I say, but I'm biased as night number 3. Which was an incredible experience to work both with you and Transport Group. That was my first like full production with Transport Group. It was great.
I mean, that cast was like bonkers in the best way. Yeah. And, you know, when I was first talking to my wife about doing it, I said, you know, I really want to play this role, but it's like opposite Jackie Hoffman, and like, they'll never like let me be with somebody as like sort of storied as Jackie Hoffman. Yeah. And lo and behold, I got the part, and I remember I like had this like initial like meet and greet session before the rest of the cast came in, just to say like hi to Jack, and Jackie Hoffman was going to come in. and say hi. And so like I was there, you know, in this big rehearsal room with nobody else but Jack Cummings.
Yeah.
And in walks Jackie Hoffman, and I like been a fan of hers for so long.
Sure, me too.
And you know, for people who don't necessarily recognize the name, like Jackie Hoffman, you know, was nominated for an Emmy for Feud, and it's just like
original Penny's mom in Hairspray, the last On the Town revival with Alicia Umfris. She plays Madame Dilly, Xanadu, Grandma Ma in Addams Family, and then every movie, Garden State, everything ever. She's just this hilarious, like self-admitted like curmudgeon of a woman, who's just super talented in a million ways. And she, you know, she came in the room and she was like, oh, so this is the guy, like, very nice to meet you. And I just kept thinking like, wow, I'm going to spend the next 3 months with this person, you know, as my girlfriend in the show. And she could not have been nicer. And, you know, for someone that is like on the surface, very sort of like, you know, crusty in a way. This tough exterior.
She's such a sweet person and just endlessly fun to work with and to be around because she's so funny. That like everything she says just makes me laugh so hard. Yeah. And so, you know, in Once Upon a Mattress, she was my girlfriend as you know, as the princess. And my mom, of course, was played by Lip Synca, John Epperson. So like it was a real sort of like therapy waiting to happen situation.
Just a normal, very straightforward production of Once Upon a Mattress, like everyone has done in their high school.
Yeah.
Okay, so then where does Be More Chill? So Be More Chill, first time around, Two Rivers is right after Mattress, before? I can't remember.
Yeah, maybe 2015. Was that same?
Yeah, that was right about the same time as Mattress, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I had worked with Joe Iconis for years doing various things, and I was aware of this impending production of this new show he was working on, Be More Chill, coming to Two River Theater in New Jersey. And I had actually done a very early, like 2-week workshop of the show.
Which, while he sips water, I'm sure all the people watching know what a workshop is, but a workshop essentially is before it is presented to the world, the writers sit down, the first step being a 29-hour reading, called that because you're only allowed 29 hours to rehearse per the contract. And then from there, a workshop is a more formalized staging of it. Sometimes with just half of it, sometimes the full thing, sometimes only certain numbers. And so it's a chance for investors to come and get a look and write big checks, but also for the creative team and the actors to start to like figure out what this is. And because I love history, the first show really ever to start this workshop process was A Chorus Line, 1975 at the Public, where Michael Bennett said, you know, before we like do this, maybe we just like sit in a room and do it and like make it better. And everyone was like, so we just spend money on a thing that no one sees? And they were like, well, they'll eventually see it.
That's an investment.
Correct. And so now that's basically, since 1975, the thing that every show does.
Yeah. And, you know, this is a tangent in itself, but I think it's interesting that, you know, there's such a fine line between like, you know, setting a show up for success by doing the workshop and these things. And then, you know, shows that sort of live in this perpetual hamster wheel of workshops and development. And it's like, okay, let's see it. Like, we worked on it enough. We got to have enough faith in this product to put it out into the world. But
correct. Okay, so you do workshops of Be More Chill, and then it goes to Two Rivers.
No, so yeah, the interesting thing was that at the time, in Be More Chill, I played the father in the show, Mr. Here, and amongst other like ensemble roles.
Sure.
And which is the role that I played in the workshop as well. But it's funny, even just that little couple year difference, I was just like a little bit too young to be the dad in the show. And so like when it came time to do the production, you know, all the people involved who I was friendly with and we were, you know, all on good terms with were like, we love you, but this is just not going to happen for you, because we just don't believe that you're going to be the dad of this show, you know? Right. And so I was, you know, I was saddened by that, but I was still like, I'm such a huge fan of Joe and of the show that I was like, I'm glad it's continuing on. And so, you know, the show, it happened, and I saw it on opening night and a few other times down in New Jersey. And I was like, there's no way that this is not going to like move on. This is like such an exciting piece of theater. the talent is so good. The music is just so good. Like this is going to be like a hit, you know?
Yeah.
And it's sort of just like flatlined from there. But the amazing thing
reviews weren't great, right? Which is part of, do you think, the initial flatlining?
Sure. I mean, reviews are so complicated. And absolutely. I mean, there are certain, you know, people in the industry that sort of give permission for shows to live on in a certain way by giving them a good review. And it did not get that. But the miraculous thing that happened was the show was recorded as an album, thankfully, and the internet found it, and the internet just like exploded with its love for it, and like it was, you know, it was streamed something like 250 million times.
Gosh,
to the point where like Joe, like I'd be out with Joe, like, you know, having a drink or dinner or something, and he'd just be like, "Hey, like I don't know what's happening with Be More Chill, but like the internet's exploding, and like I don't know how to translate this into like a next step for the show, because really it kind of hadn't happened before, I think, in that way."
No, I mean, it feels like such a 21st century way for a show to like build buzz, especially after it feels like this first production flatlines and like that was our shot, you know, to then yeah, I mean, it really is crazy. I remember people on tours, because we've been doing these tours for 10 years and we have, you know, our finger on the pulse of like what people are seeing, what they like, what they don't like. And I remember the two shows that people talked about for a very long time before they came were Hadestown and Be More Chill. And Hadestown, I was like, yeah, I was out of town when they did it at New York Theater Workshop. I missed it. And Be More Chill, I don't know. I was in New Jersey or something. And then it just starts to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And it became such a force that it was undeniable, I think. You know, producers, you know, the lead producer of Be More Chill, Jerry Gehring, who's like this amazing guy, really was like, "Hey, there's something here, and we need to find a way to make this, put this back on a stage." You know, and I remember saying, you know, as Joe was privately talking to me about this potential for a new production of the show, I remember saying to him, like, "Listen, man, I'm older now, and at
this point you have children, you have a child,
yes,
right? You have Mara.
I had a child,
yeah."
And I said, you know, whatever I need to do, I would love to be considered for this role. And you know, you can say that to a writer all you want, and especially if they're friends with you, they're like, yeah, sure. But there's like 18 million other people that need to be convinced that you are the right person for the role.
Right.
And, you know, it just so happened that the actor who originally played Mr. Here in Two River is this super talented guy who probably many people know is Paul Whitty is his name. And he was just currently in Come From Away when when we all shut down, and he's been in Once and like all these things, and a similar type, you know, a bald guy with a beard, which is like my thing.
Sure.
But he was busy. He was like busy working on another project. So it kind of worked out that I sort of found my way into the production. And, you know, from there, it was just this like juggernaut that, you know, could not be stopped in the best way. And we were off Broadway at Signature Theater in Manhattan. And it was really, I mean, it was truly unlike anything that I've ever experienced, because the people that loved the show already before it was even on a stage were so rabid for it, and they're just like the most devoted fan base I've ever seen for anything.
Yeah, and I saw it at Signature, and I remember sitting. I went by myself, and I'm sitting there, and the moment the first chord starts, my entire row leaned forward, and I remember sitting in my seat and was like, what? Yeah. And then as every song came, especially by the time they got to Michael in the Bathroom, it was like, it was like Hamilton, a rock concert, any of these shows where people like know it so well. And I felt like a little bit of like an odd man out, where I was like, I'm behind or something.
You got to get with it, Tim.
I know. I was like, usually I'm like on top of stuff, but Be More Chill, I was like late to the game or / older now. Right. Okay, and so then it goes well, and then it propels you to Broadway, and it's your Broadway debut at the Lyceum.
Yes.
And so talk to me the first time walking into this theater that's been there 117 years. What is it? You're now on Broadway. Well, it's this magical building. Talk us through that moment.
Yeah, I mean, prior to getting into the building, we of course were, we knew we were going to be at the Lyceum, a few months before we were actually there. And so I just remember, I spent a lot of time in Times Square, as you do for many reasons. So I'm like just around those buildings and those theaters all the time. And I've gotten such a high off of walking by those theaters and seeing the marquees and the pictures of the actors out front, and just dreaming of like, what will it be like someday when I can be one of these people that gets to be in one of these buildings performing for like 1,000 people. And so when I knew that we were going to be at the Lyceum, I would often just go by it and just look at the building, because I just, it struck me, I was so emotional about it because it was this dream coming true. And also like the building itself is so storied and historic and gorgeous. I mean, it's so ornate. The columns in front are so ornate, and it's got that sort of like wavy marquee lighting. It's just like, looks like
it's Broadway. It is.
Yes.
And I mean, if you watch movies, like if you watch The Talented Mr. Ripley, he goes to a theater and it's the Lyceum. It's like what they use in movies when they're like, it's a Broadway theater. You're like, yes, it's the Lyceum. It's hands down.
And, and part of another cool like happenstance of the whole thing was that the show art was like this sort of blue and purple colors. Yeah. And the seats in the Lyceum are purple.
And so our theme for this week, coincidentally, is all purple curtains, which I'm
just noticing this.
I would love to say I planned it, but it just happened to be that. But I'm very smart.
Yeah, also. No, but it was like kind of this thing was like, oh, we're supposed to be here. Like this is the one theater we were like meant to be inside of for this show. But in terms of walking in, I remember they wanted to like gather the cast like in the front lobby before we all went into the house for the first time. And as with so many Broadway theaters, the lobby's really tiny. I mean, there's not much of like, it's not like when you go to like a performing arts center and like
Denver, and it's huge.
Sure, yeah, where there's like this whole experience. The lobby itself is so tiny that it was like, okay, like what's on the other side of this package? It just felt like this really exciting moment. And we took us in and we just walked through the house up onto the stage. And I just remember, looking out into the house and seeing seeing all the seats, and just, it was really emotional. I remember I cried a lot in that moment, as did many of us, because, it's such a powerful thing to be in a space like that. And again, if it's like this thing you've always dreamed of doing and suddenly you're there, it just felt, I don't know, it's something I'll never forget. And the camaraderie we all felt as a company, just being like, we're here. This is like this amazing moment. And then it was so cool. We like met everyone in the building, and it just was like, this is going to be our home for a while,
Yeah.
And it was unbelievable. And, from there you get to know the building itself, which is like insane. The Lyceum is an insane building.
Yeah.
And
you went up to the archives above, the old Froman apartment, which is crazy. We featured that on our video maybe 2 days ago or something. I can't remember. It's so crazy.
Cool. I mean, the whole theater, because it's so old, it's like, it's a tower. It's not deep. It's not a big space. In fact, they had to like build through the block to the back of the next block to complete the building itself.
Yeah.
And there's really no sort of freight entrance to the theater because it's so old that like all the sets that were used were built there. There's a level above the stage where they would build all the sets and then just drop them in, which is just insane. And so anything that goes in there now has to be run in piece by piece by piece. And it's part of the reason why, there's a few reasons why, but it's part of the reason why a lot of big musicals don't go there, because logistically it's like impossible to get that sort of equipment and set and whatever is needed for a big musical in there.
Yeah, it's interesting that like when it was built, Daniel Froman builds it with the idea that it's equipped for any technical show ever, knowing that it's going to be built on site. But then 117 years later, that actually screws them because of the in-house, aspect of it.
Yeah,
that's crazy. The Lyceum is one of my favorites. I do so much random research. And so the team that is there of Sylvia and Mark and all of them who are upstairs working above a Broadway theater every day, all day, they're like my favorite people in Times Square.
Yeah, I mean, that's the coolest job ever. And like, I don't know how much of it you got to see or tour, but like there's the Froman apartment itself. And for those who don't know, it's like the man who was responsible for building it, Daniel Froman, he built this apartment up there, and it's like opulent, you know, it's like marble, and there's like a grand piano up there. It's like this gorgeous, like 1903 apartment. But in addition to that, in the sort of back half of the theater is the Schubert archives, where anything that the Schubert organization has to do with or has ever had to do with is up there to be cataloged and stored. Mm-hmm. So there's things like the original sheet music to like, I don't know, Annie, Get Your Gun, and like whatever, and like props from like original productions of things from 1921, and like tax documents and blueprints of like all these other buildings that the Schuberts own. And it's this real, for any sort of like theater nerd or history nerd, it's like absolutely like the holy grail of a place. I mean, it's unbelievable to see. And it really has an aura about it where you could just feel like all of this history. And, that's above you when you're doing the show there. That's always on top of you. That's always part of your experience of being in the building, is knowing that all this history is there.
Yeah, and so that's what you want to, and that's what you want to say to like audience members, where I'm like, you have no idea, like you're sitting downstairs for $8 million a ticket to see this show, but like above you, in addition to all the dressing rooms and all the insanity of all that, it's like you have this entire treasure trove of stuff happening, literally just hanging out on top of you. I love that. Okay, so I have some questions for you now that we've made it to the Lyceum. Be more chill. Okay, so Trish on Facebook yesterday says, has becoming a dad, you have 2 children, has becoming a dad changed what roles you would like to play?
Great question, Trish. It's funny. I think I've always sort of played roles that were older than what I am. I've always been like, even when I was in college, I was playing like old men,
Right.
So I feel like I've always had this sort of old soul quality to myself. And so in a weird way, as I've gotten a little bit older, I'm sort of growing into the roles that I always thought I should and have been playing.
Yeah.
So I think I see myself, like, it's weird where like the age of things that I used to do and things that I thought I was have now like met in the middle. And where I'm like playing like 40-year-old dads, and it's like, oh, that's me. That's exactly
You're
what
like,
I am.
this is me.
So
yeah, it's crazy because now your experience, everything is like your life experience now truly matches, so it'd be interesting to go back and see if you brought the same insights and the same experience that you thought being a dad would be prior, as the roles have that's cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then on the heels of that, Tina Kravitz says, are your kids interested in Broadway?
Well, my youngest daughter is like 4 months old, so we don't know yet.
Okay. TBD, we'll call that.
She does love music, so that's positive. But my younger daughter, she's 4.5 now, and she sort of grew up around, she continues to grow up around theater. And my wife is a house manager for the Sondheim Theater. So, instead of like having babysitters, although, we had babysitters, but like most of the time my wife would take my daughter to work. And so she was there for, she basically grew up with the cast of Beautiful, the Carole King musical. So it's kind of just in her life in such a major way that I don't know that she could even fathom a life without theater in it.
Yeah.
And I remember her coming to like Be More Chill Tech and like hanging out in the house with like Joe, and which really, for an actor who always also wanted to be a dad, that's it. I mean, to look out from the stage and see my daughter with like my best friend who wrote the Broadway musical that I'm rehearsing for, it was just like, well, I can die now.
I'm not crying. You're crying. Right. Yeah. That's crazy. It's those stories that you hear about little kids who it sounds like Liza Minnelli growing up like in a trunk at her mom's theater, and you're just like, God, what a crazy different life than I had growing up in Michigan with a Target and Kohl's, and you in Connecticut. That's crazy. That's really crazy.
Yeah. So I feel like she, to be determined whether or not she wants to like pursue it, but we listen to a lot of musicals, and she knows a lot of She knows a lot of stuff.
I love that. Okay, so then now fast forward to quarantine where I'm still in New York, you're in Connecticut. So Sam Quinn, who's one of our favorite humans, he says, what advice do you have for performers who are struggling to stay creative, artistically engaged during quarantine?
That's such a great question. And I'm still figuring it out myself, to be honest. But I think, you know, when this all began, when quarantine began, it felt like the unknown time of it was like, oh, you know, this will be an interesting time. I don't know. Like, I never anticipated it being such a long time. And right. as the news of theater itself, but specifically New York theater being pushed back and back and back, it's really been challenging. And, you know, it's made me rethink about how to pursue my career in a certain way. I also will say that, you know, I think there's a lot of pressure on people. There's this thing where it's like, oh, we're home. Like now, like, let's just create all the things we ever wanted to create.
Right.
But that for so many people is just not the way that they're receiving this time. And so I would first say, don't put too much pressure on yourself to, like, you know, come out of this having like figured out your life or having written the next great play or novel. You know, this is like a tricky, oftentimes depressing, oftentimes unknown moment that's like wherever you are, I think is okay. And so I think we need to like give ourselves a little permission and just be like, this is really, really tricky and we will figure it out as we get there. And I also just think, you know, theater and performance has existed forever.
Yeah.
You know, since cave drawings and the Greeks and Shakespeare and on and on. And there's this human need, I think, for people to tell stories through their voice and through their bodies. And so that will never go away.
Right.
And similarly, there's a need, I think, for people to receive that. I think there's like forever going to be this need for people to be an audience and a need for people to be a performer. And so the dynamics will change and the format will change, but it will still exist. And so I think it's like, we don't want to, like, it's okay to be sad about it and okay to be frustrated by it. But I also think it's going to find a way, as Ian Malcolm says in Jurassic Park, life finds a way.
Well
you
said.
didn't think I was going to bring it back?
No,
to Jurassic
I was
Park.
like, this is taking a turn that I didn't foresee coming. But I'm with you.
No, but truly, I just think it's going to find its legs, and it will be different, but it'll still be there.
Yeah, and I think sometimes, you know, a lot of our life as performers, the work feels so outward so many times, of like going to class or going to this and networking and doing all this. But I think it's an opportunity of time to also maybe do some introspective work just as a human. I think also like connecting with families and spending more time with your children or your parents or your friends or whatever, I think strengthens you and makes you a different human, which is all we're doing once we hit a stage. You hope to be as human as possible. And the more human you become, you connect with an audience on a much, you know, deeper level, because the illusion kind of fades away. So I think there's a lot of work that is done that we're not used to calling work. We're used to, you know, going to tap class. So
sure. Yeah, absolutely. 100%. And, you know, there's part of a performer's life that is unknown anyway. Even in the best of times, we're all scrambling to get work and to like figure out the next thing that we're going to do to sustain ourselves and our family. And so I just think of it as a harder version of that. Like we're, you know, still struggling as we've always struggled. And now we just have like a bigger hill to climb.
Correct. Okay. So on the heels of that, Caitlin Elizabeth always has great questions. Hi, Caitlin. So she says, it must have been, we'll like hide below it. It must have been so hard to have been part of a workshop and then not be selected to continue with the show. Has that made you hesitant to take a workshop job again? On the other hand, what a comeback to make your Broadway debut with the same show, truly. So how do you navigate the ins and outs of like booking a show, almost booking a show, not booking a show? How do you work through that as Jason? Yeah,
I mean, I think, it certainly has not deterred me from ever taking work like that, because I think nowadays more than ever, work is gotten less and less through the sort of standard audition process. I mean, that's part of it, but I think really, at least I found in my career, like work begets work. And so oftentimes I'll suddenly find myself involved with a show that doesn't necessarily have this like Broadway trajectory, but was doing a reading, and then it became a bigger reading, and then a workshop, and suddenly there's some momentum and you're part of it. And you know, in those moments, you're sort of making, you know, trying to secure your place in that show. That being said, I've been involved in many shows that have gone on to Broadway or bigger things from where they started that I didn't end up being with. And I just think you have to remember that there's so many reasons why you may not continue with a show. And I find that it's rarely ever, at least no one's told me this to my face, but I truly believe that it's not really anything to do with your talent. I believe that there are, you know, either it's an age situation, like as I think was with my case and Be More Chill, or just like, you know, insert 19 other reasons why this producer needs to have this person in it. And, you know, this director really sees this other person who's actually more right for the role. You know, there's a lot of reasons why you may not continue with the role. Yeah. But all you can do is be the best at that role while you have it, you know, and that is that will like continue your trajectory with other shows. You know, there have been some shows that I was workshopping. I did a long time workshops for Come From Away, actually. And really? Yeah, I did like the original NAMP readings and then a couple workshops. And it's how I met Christopher Ashley, who's the artistic director at La Jolla Playhouse, and, you know, won the Tony Award for Come From Away and all these things. And I met him doing that. And like I said, for a number of reasons, I wasn't able to continue with the show, but he's had me in for all kinds of readings. And, you know, he's become an ally in my actor life, and someone that I respect and I believe respects me, and so will think of me for other things. So, you know, it's like, yes, it's a bummer when you don't get that continuation of the job, but all you can do is, you know, chalk it up to experience and hope it helps you get the next one.
Yeah. Otherwise you go insane. And it's it's just not a good look. Insanity is not a great look on an actor in the middle of Times Square. Okay, this is probably going to be, they've all been great questions, but this is maybe my favorite question. Donna, who we love, says, was Tim a hard taskmaster when he was dance captain in Once Upon a Mattress? I want honest answers right here.
You know, yes is the answer. No, but, you know, I think it was like a pretty big cast. And so like there was a lot to wrangle. And I think that the dance ability of the cast was all over the place. You know, I think it wasn't a cast that was like hired for like being like dancers. It was like a cast of like humans that had all different skills and strengths. And so I think that's always tricky when you try to like wrangle those things and help help people shine in their best way. I also didn't have to do like as much of the movement and dancing that the rest of the cast did. I kind of just was there like looking goofy most of the time. So,
and I think before any time anyone danced, they were like, and your character exits stage right. And I was like, well, that makes that easy. Great.
Yeah. But you know, you were appropriately a taskmaster.
Thank you.
And listen, I think to me, there's nothing cooler than a person who takes their job really seriously. I think that is like the best quality a person can have, to like, you know, just put their entire self into something. And I would say that as dance captain, you did that. And so,
hey, I appreciate that. And I think the craziest part of dance captain is like put in rehearsals where, you know, it's in the afternoon and you're literally putting someone new into the show. And we were nervous. This was when your first daughter was born, and we knew it was coming up. And so we had like let's have an understudy rehearsal with the Prince understudy, and running that. I was like, probably the craziest rehearsal we had the entire run. You weren't, you.
Right. I never saw it. Yeah, really.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny. That whole thing is kind of hilarious because the actor who was my understudy, such a sweet man, named Doug, who, you know, it was like my child was coming. There was no denying that I was going to have a baby.
Yes.
And it was like, when his baby comes, he's out of the show until we know everything's cool. And so it was like, Doug's going to go on. Everyone knew like Doug's going on. And miraculously, my daughter was born like 2 p.m. on a Monday afternoon on our day off with like no complications. So I was like at work the next day, and I feel bad Doug never got to do it. But he was so ready though. He was so ready.
Yeah, we got to see it. It was great. I saw it. The whole world didn't get to see it, but
I was like, part of me was very proud that I didn't have to miss it, but I was like, I felt bad for him. I did.
For sure. Okay, one final question, and then we'll let you get back to hamburgers and hot dogs or whatever you're doing for 4th of July. Caitlin comes back to us and says, okay, she's dying to know, where does SweetTooth come from? I feel like this is the perfect way to end our time with you. Tell us.
Classic question. It's probably not what you would ever imagine it to be, but when I was younger, like late high school, I was very into spoken word and rapping and hip hop. And so I would often like write rhymes and freestyle and things. So SweetTooth was my rap name. And
of course, obviously. Of course.
And as I got to college and I started like rapping at parties and stuff. And that was, everyone started calling me SweetTooth, and it sort of stuck. And so cut to, when I joined Actors Equity in New York City, I was joining, and you have to have a unique name to everyone else in the union. And there's already a Jason Williams in the union. So they said, well, you have to change your name to join the union. And I said, well, can I just add SweetTooth to my name? I'll never forget the woman at the desk. She was like, you can, like, if you want to, you can. And I was like, I want to, let's do it. So it sort of became my like stage name at that moment. This was probably 2009 or something.
Sure.
And it stuck, and it's been that way ever since. Yeah. And, part of me keeps like wondering when someone's going to be like, hey man, you're 40 years old. What are you going to do with this SweetTooth? And, but no one's asked me to get rid of it yet. And
it's perfect.
It's just who I am.
Yeah, exactly. It feels right. At this point, it's what everyone knows.
Yeah, right,
nobody know any difference. You've been awesome. Okay, so social media wise, if people want to follow you and continue to follow your journey post quarantine and all of that, where should they find you? Instagram maybe is the best.
Yeah, Instagram at Jason SweetTooth, 2 T's and SweetTooth, and same with Twitter. Those are my 2 spots. And yeah, please follow. It's like, I have put a lot of theater content up there, but also a lot of my family, and it's a great time.
Yeah, I love that. You've been awesome. It's so great to see you. And
too,
I'm glad you guys are making it through with the parents and all that. Thanks for joining us, and good luck. And we'll see you on the other side of all of this.
All right, man. Thanks for having me, and be well with all of this, and stay sane and stay safe.
Thanks, man. Happy 4th of July.
You too, man. Bye.
So in true fashion, every time I get off a phone call, this happens. Jude doesn't have it live. Usually he's sleeping. But if he hears me say bye, he instantly jumps into my lap. So welcome to my life. You usually just see it on an Insta story, but here it is live for all of you. Jason is, he's the real deal. He's just like a real, incredibly talented, but also nice. And these people are what like make the industry, for all of its craziness, make it a joy, because you get to work with people like that and then catch up with people like that. So I hope you enjoyed spending your 4th of July with him and with me. As always, if you want to know more about Broadway Up Close, you can head over to our website, which is www.broadwayupclose.com. If you're looking for custom merchandise, you can check out our gift shop online, since we're not open in Times Square with that thing called COVID-19. We ship very quickly, so head over to there. And then coming soon, Monday, we head into week 4 of our virtual tour series journey with the next oldest theater, which is my favorite of all the theaters. And also my French Bulldog's named after it. So I think you'll enjoy next week's. You guys have been absolutely wonderful. I hope you enjoy the time today. Have a wonderful holiday. Happy 4th of July. If you haven't seen the Hamill film yet, I watched it with some friends last night, and it's every bit as good as the 30 million times I saw it at the Richard Rodgers. So I hope you get a chance to check that out and feel very patriotic and nostalgic in some aspects about our varied, vast, insane history of this American nation. We will see you again for more videos on Monday, and we will see you next week again here Saturday Night on Broadway. Happy 4th of July. I love you all. Bye from New York City and me in Belasco. And with that, I say we are one day closer to Broadway being back. Bye.